Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out for this evening's session on Kinesthetic Classroom. I would like to welcome you all and go through just a few items here. I typically wouldn't read through an introduction, but there are several things I want to hit on to make sure that I get all the detail correct on it. So, first I'd like to thank our district administration for supporting our efforts through our Carolyn White Pep Grant, and that is the reason we're able to bring in such high caliber global speakers such as Mike as a follow-up to Dr. Medina's presentation in March, and several of the other professional development opportunities that we had over the last few years here. And I'd also like to thank our K-12 physical education and health staff, who were the ones who were really the essential components in making the Pep Grant successful, and being open to and willing to really stay up to date with the latest research in our field and best practices in terms of what is best for kids here in Westport. And I also have to always give a thank you to our grant coordinator, Jay Rasmussen. She's the one that pulls all the behind-the-scenes strings to make sure that we are able to implement everything that we have to be in compliance with the grant and be able to put these special opportunities on. And finally, last but not least, I definitely want to thank the parents of the community. You guys are the ones that support every program in the district, and the premise behind educating the whole child and every program that goes along with the well-rounded education for our most important asset, which is your children. So a few details. There'll be a brief question and answer session following Mike's presentation this evening. And then everybody who's here probably RSVP'd. I may send out just a brief survey, 2 to 3 questions, just to get a little bit of feedback. If you guys want to share any thoughts on this evening or have any follow-up questions, that could be a way for you to do that. If you're not into that and don't want to do it, please just hit delete. If you see that come through, no hard feelings, I won't know any difference. So, if you're on Twitter and want to do any sort of live tweeting this evening, there's a couple signs around, but we're using the hashtag capital WPS and then lowercase moves for obvious reasons, which we'll all be exposed to shortly. But then we can go back and track that and take a look at all of the quotes and pictures and anything else that comes out of this evening, and be able to continue to learn from that and grow with it from that. And then we're going to move on to the moment that you've all been waiting for. Just a brief introduction on Mike Kuczala, who is a best-selling author, an acclaimed keynote speaker, and innovative professional developer. He's a leading authority on using movement and understanding the brain-body connection in both educational and corporate settings. His keynotes, workshops, and professional development programs have been enjoyed by tens of thousands of teachers, administrators, parents, trainers, and corporate executives around the globe. Mike is also the academic director for the Regional Training Center, an educational consulting firm in Randolph, New Jersey, and president of Kuczala Consulting. And last but certainly not least, he's also the proud father of twins, Scott and Debbie. Bringing a highly regarded speaker like Mike into our community aligns with our Westport Public Schools guiding principles. It also offers us the how and the why. Movement may be incorporated in schools, homes, or workplaces and increase awareness of the benefits of exercise and movement in the general community. And now, without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for, Mike Kuczala.
Thank you, good evening. Thank you for that nice introduction. It's been a fantastic day here in Westport, working with staff and now being able to talk with you this evening about movement and physical activity in different learning contexts. Most important thing you need to know about me, I think, aside from what you've told the audience, is that I come from a family of teachers. I was in the classroom for 10 years. My mother and father were both teachers. My sister is a 3rd grade teacher. My wife is a former 2nd and 4th grade teacher, and 3 of my grandparents were teachers. So it's just what we do. And so it's been my life, and it's given a lot back to me. So I'm really, really happy to be here. So the important thing to understand in the brief time we have together is, what I call the brain-body connection. It's in play all the time. It's in play in every classroom. It's in play right now. And the more you know about it and the more that you realize the role that it plays, the more you can influence it rather than it influencing you all the time. And teachers are more and more understanding the role of the brain-body connection in the classroom. Let me give you 2 examples. Biomedical researchers now know that cortisol, which is a powerful hormonal byproduct of stress, is also a powerful immune cell inhibitor. So for a teacher, what does that mean? And for all of us, what does it mean? I mean, the school year has just started, and what's happening is the pressure is building, the workload is growing, the accelerator stays down too long, the danger flag is risen too often, and we go, and the possibility of getting sick from the stress becomes real. So what is stress? It's perception of an event. One person's stress is another person's joy. And what is a perception? It's a thought. So we can actually link our thoughts to illness. And researchers always kind of poo-pooed that, but now they can prove it. And so when's the last time your doctor said to you, what have you been thinking about lately? It doesn't happen very often. More often, really asking about stress. And it's almost the same thing. So that's one profound way that the brain affects the body. And Deepak Chopra has a wonderful quote, and it is your immune system is constantly eavesdropping on your internal dialogue. So that's pretty profound brain-body connection material. Conversely, we now know, and it was thought up until about 2 decades ago, that the brain cells or nerve cells or neurons that you were born with is all you got. It's about 86 billion. We now know that we can create new nerve cells in the hippocampus region of the brain. And there's one way to do that. And we're discovering more things about how to create this process of neurogenesis, and there's a lot more to discover about it. But aerobic activity seems to be the best, most profound way to create those new nerve cells in the hippocampus. As it turns out, what we know now is that the brain is the primary beneficiary of the benefits of aerobic activity. We just didn't know because we couldn't see in. But of course, over the last decade now, with things like magnetoencephalography, we can see in. And we know that the brain gets more benefit than any other part of the body from aerobic activity. And so one of the best things that we can do for our life is simply to get moving. So that's also a profound brain-body connection in the other direction. It's always in play. It's in play in all classrooms. And again, the more a teacher knows about it, the more they can influence it and use it to their advantage. So what I'd like to do with you right now is this. I would like you to feel the brain-body connection so that it sticks with you. So I'm going to ask you to stand somewhere in the room where you have enough space, and you can use aisle space, chair space, down here, I don't care where you go. So for you to be able to raise your arms and twist without hitting anybody. Would you do that? Thank you. All right, very good. So I want you to keep your legs and hips still, and I'd like you to raise your arms. And I want you to twist one way or the other. And when you can't twist any further, mark that spot on the wall and come back. And then put your arms down. Okay. Now I'm going to take you through about a 90-second visualization with your eyes closed. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to raise your arms in your mind's eye only, in your imagination. And so when I ask you to close your eyes and say in your mind's eye only, raise your arms, don't do this. Somebody in the room is going to do that. I'll laugh at you silently, but I won't single you out, I promise. Okay? So your arms are going to stay at your side this whole time. You're not going to twist. It's all going to be done here. So if you would, please, go ahead and close your eyes. And in your mind's eye only, please raise your arms once again and begin to twist to the original mark. And now you're going to move 12 inches past the original mark, and you're going to mark that spot on the wall. And come back. There's the original mark. Your arms are at your side, and you can put them down. Keep your eyes closed, and once again, in your mind's eye only, if you raise your arms and twist, there's the original mark. There's the 12-inch mark. Now move 6 inches past the 12-inch mark to 18 inches past the original mark. Mark that spot on the wall. Come back. There's the 12-inch mark. There's the original mark. Arms are at your side, and you can put them down. Last time, with your eyes closed, in your mind's eye only, once again, raise your arms and twist. There's the original mark, and you're thinking, how could I ever just do that? Then move to the 12-inch mark and the 18-inch mark. Mark that spot on the wall. It's comfortable. Come back. There's 12. There's the original mark. And your arms are at your side, and you can put them down. Now, will you please open your eyes? Now, once again, please raise your arms and see how far you can twist. Go ahead. So how many people were able to go farther? Yeah. And it's not that you couldn't do that before. It's just that I wanted you to feel this brain-body connections and understand that the brain can put the body in positions of physical success. And of course, this goes on all over the place. There's not a top-notch athlete in the world, frankly, there's probably not a high school athlete in the world that doesn't do these visualization techniques. The Blue Angels, before they fly, they sit down in a room with their captain, they go through it here. Classroom teachers use it sometimes to visualize concepts with kids, because people are always thinking. Sometimes it might be helpful to guide them, or it might help to guide them. So I just want you to really, on a very physical way and intellectual way, understand this brain-body connection, because it lays the groundwork for everything else. So thanks, you can have a seat. And maybe you can already guess, but I'm going to get you up more. I want you to experience what your children are going to be experiencing, what some of the staff has experienced today, and what I'd like to share with you now is a 6-part framework for using movement thoughtfully. And I want to say movement and physical activity because they're a little bit different. I'm moving right now. Not much to it. If I start to do something, say, like this, now I'm getting into physical activity. When I go, to my elbows, if I go back, heels, I'm getting into physical activity. So I'm going to show you a framework using movement and physical activity in 6 ways that gives teachers direction, it gives them options, and it takes them from the role and self-view of teacher to a little bit of a cliche, facilitator of learning, and designer of the learning environment. That's a pretty important process as we move through this. So the framework has 6 parts. Step 1 is preparing the brain to learn. Step 2 is providing brain breaks. You've all sat for too long in a session, in a lecture, at a conference with a PowerPoint, and you know you need to stand up, but you're not getting the opportunity to. It happens to kids all day long in schools across the world, around the world and across the United States. And step 3 is supporting physical fitness and exercise. Step 4 is creating class cohesion. Step 5 is reviewing content using movement. And step 6 is teaching content using movement. Okay, the research just tells us that when we implement these things in the classroom and implement them school and district-wide, that academic achievement rises. That kids, where there's a problem with this, show up to school more. That kids are in the principal's office less because they're getting some needs met that their brain and body need. So step 1, preparing the brain to learn. We can actually influence the brain through different movements that have been created. I'm going to show you some simple ones tonight. There's some more maybe difficult ones to do, maybe not appropriate in this setting. But I want to show you just some simple ideas of what I'm talking about, and I'll do a little bit of an explanation before we move on to the next part. So, preparing the brain to learn, if you would just stand up at your seats, you don't have to go anywhere else. And you're going to need both your hands, though. I would like you to take your left hand and grab your nose. Now I want you to cross over with your right arm as my jacket breaks and grab your opposite ear. Now I'd like you to take, when I say switch, I want this ear hand to come to the nose. I want the nose hand to go to the opposite ear. Just like that. Okay? Ready? Switch. 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 And switch. All right, relax for a second. If you ended up like this, then it wasn't quite right. You'll get it. One more time. Grab your nose. Cross over, and we are crossing the midline of our body, effectively asking both hemispheres of the brain to communicate and coordinate more efficiently. We're changing the brain, we're myelinating axons of neurons across the corpus callosum. It's all a good thing for kids' brains. So ready, and switch. 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 Oh, that's good. You're good. Switch. All right, now do this for me. Just tap. You can say, just like that, cross over, and you can do it right at your seat. And remember, I want you to experience what your kids are going to experience. So if you're not used to country line dancing in public, I apologize. So now I want you to clap on the side that you're tapping. Ready? Good. Now stop clapping, keep tapping. And in fact, slow the tap down. So what we're going to do next, you're going to need a slower tap. Grab your nose. Cross over. Every time we switch the tap, we switch the nose in here. Ready? Switch, 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 and switch. And just tap. And clap, clap, clap. All right, great. Have a seat. I like to have fun with audiences with that. This in isolation, great prepare the brain exercise. This in isolation, great prepare the brain exercise. Now we can get more complicated when we're talking about vestibular system development. That system in the brain, that visual system, one of the earliest systems in the brain to develop, it keeps things still, keeps words on the page, helps us to go from left to right on a page. I'm not going to ask you to do any of these, but for instance, it's all about balance. So the research on the brain has come a long way about how we can influence kids' brains in getting them ready to learn. Moving on to the next step in the framework, providing brain breaks, or brain boosts, or brain energizers. There's different reasons to call them breaks because of working memory capacity. There's different reasons to call them boosts and energizers because of the blood flow that we get around the brain and body. So a child has been sitting for 15 or 20 minutes. In some cases a half hour, in some cases 45 or 60 minutes. They absolutely need to stand. Because what is happening is that blood is getting cooled in the butt and legs. And we need for them to stand. So, as promised, if you stand please, you're going to be up and down. Turn to a partner please. Any partner, doesn't matter. If you have to reach across an aisle, it's okay. Face your partner. And I would like you to raise your right palm just like this, about waist, or whatever, high, okay? Now I'd like you to take your left pointer finger and put it in the palm of the person across from you. When I say go, I want you to simultaneously pull your finger out of the palm across from you and try to grab the finger that's in your palm. Let me say that one more time. When I say go, simultaneously, try to pull your finger out of your partner's palm and try to grab your partner's finger. Okay? Here we go. Ready, go! All right, we're going to do best of 3. Here we go. You know what's interesting is today I was telling, teachers that I come from a family of teachers, and I told them that teachers cheat. I'm already seeing this. So now I'm discovering the general public cheats. All right, here we go. Finger in, ready, go. Last time, best of 3. Ready, go. One more with your partner. Help, different activity. Put your hands down for a second. You're still going to face your partner. What I want you to do is to do a variation of rock, paper, scissors. So you're going to go rock, paper, scissors, and say show. And you're going to show a number. You might have 3, your partner might have 2. The first person to add up the sum wins. Go at your own pace. Rock, paper, scissors, show. 5. Rock, paper, scissors, show. 7. Go. So why do we do that craziness? Because when I'm in a learning situation, and I've had learners that have been sitting for the past 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 45 minutes, and sometimes it goes longer, I need to stand them up so I have a more efficient and focused learner in front of me. Hopefully you can feel that. And that does not get out of control. I've worked with tens of thousands of teachers around the world. I've read thousands of graduate projects on the brain. And it becomes your best friend as a classroom manager, because you're meeting kids' basic human needs, and you're also, you end up with a motivated classroom where students want to partake. And it just really works well. But those are just two parts of the framework. So what's next? Supporting exercise and fitness. My co-author and I, and co-designed with a graduate course, this all comes from a graduate course we co-designed back in 2008. We were a little bit troubled by including this in the framework because classroom teachers don't have that great of influence on the fitness lives of their children. PE teachers do, but not necessarily classroom teachers. Two things changed our mind. This is number one. And whether or not you're familiar with this research, just always so happy to say this. We know, without a doubt, that physically fit kids do better academically. Period. The research comes out the same way again and again and again. First started in 2001, big study in California with about 1 million kids. They compared their fit grams with their achievement tests. And the kids who were fitter had better achievement tests. And they did it with 2.5 million kids in 2006 in Texas. Then Dr. Charles Hillman at the University of Illinois recreated it with 3rd and 5th graders and found the same thing, except he looked at their brains and he found a more efficient, focused brain. Jerome Caldwell at the University of Southern Mississippi recently, in the past 3 to 4 years, has been doing the same type of research, and again, it shows the same thing. Kids who are physically fit do better academically, show up to school more, they're in the principal's office less. It just is that way again and again and again. The other thing we know, even if a child is not physically fit, with acute bouts of aerobic activity, we have a brain that is essentially on fire for about the next hour. That's where learning readiness PE comes from. If you have a child who's struggling in language arts, if you have a child who's struggling in math, that's when they have their physical education, right before. And the research bears out that that works, and that's a good, best practice. The problem is that we live in a culture of sitness versus fitness. Our bodies were built to move. Our bodies are built to be physically active and exercising. That's what turns our brains on. And some of the time, it's a matter of school system coming together and making sure that they're looking at the research. And I'm really happy that Westport is on board with that they are looking at the research, they are exploring different options, they're looking at different opportunities to make good decisions going forward. There's a lot of schools who are not. And I think they continue to ignore the research in this issue borders on malpractice. If I were in a position with students to have influence over the school system, one of the first things I would do is to make sure that kids have the opportunity to be in positions of getting into their target heart rate zone for 30 minutes most days, because that tells us that they're going to be more ready to learn and academic achievement is going to rise. So it's a really important, critical issue, and I'd like to make a recommendation to you, maybe one of the only ones I'll make tonight. If you take nothing away from this except buying this particular book, it's called Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain. It's written by a gentleman named John Ratey, R-A-T-E-Y. And the interesting thing about John is that he's not a fitness guru. He's an associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard. And the first 2 chapters are about education. But then he goes on to talk about ADHD. He goes on to talk about stress, Alzheimer's disease, addiction, depression. Raise your hand if you ever had the experience where you felt really stressed and you went and did some aerobic activity and you felt really great when you were done. Have you had that experience? Yeah. When you aerobically exercise, it's like taking a little bit of Prozac, and these different attentional drugs and antidepressant drugs, and it changes the chemistry in your brain. So it takes these neurotransmitters naturally and balances them. Now, I'm not up here saying that people shouldn't be medicated, not at all. I'm not a doctor, not here to do that. I'm saying what the research shows is that aerobic activity balances neurotransmitters and chemicals in the brain and helps to satisfy some of those needs. For example, kids with ADHD don't make as much BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which John Rady calls miracle growth of the brain. It's critical to learning. It's housed in our large muscles, and when you exercise, it gets released. That's why kids with ADHD have to move. They don't make as much. And so we should strive to give them more opportunities to do that. So the other reason, I'm going to step off my soapbox, sorry about that, just that physical fitness is so important to all of our lives. And it's difficult in this country to stay physically fit. It's a daily struggle, and we all have wellness stories, right? We all have those struggles. We live and thank goodness on some level, a pill and procedure culture. But the hard part about that is daily living and trying to be physically fit and be physically active. Our lifestyles aren't always conducive to that. But the other reason that we chose to put this in the framework is this. 1 in 3 kids born in the year 2000 will develop diabetes. And that number rises to 1 in 2 if they're African American or Hispanic. That's astounding. And so those kids are 16, 17 years old, and Tracy and I just felt it was imperative that we teach teachers how to include exercise in the classroom, to show that physical fitness is important to your academic life, to show that we can be role models as teachers, and that we all have this wellness story, and together we can move forward. So we're not going to do any specific exercises with physical fitness and exercise, but I just want you to understand how important it is to the learning process, and how we just need to encourage kids and let them know that they do have control and power over their academic life through physical fitness. Okay, step 4 in the framework is creating class cohesion. Research tells us also that when you build relationships between students and build relationships between students and teachers, academic achievement rises. We're trying to build this emotionally safe place for kids to achieve by becoming educational risk takers. So emotional environment creates intellectual achievement. And what we're striving for is a home for the mind, a place where kids feel safe. Because the number one thing teachers face every day, the biggest obstacle to success in their job, is not the Common Core, it's not assessment, it's not the teacher observation, it is student motivation. And when you create an environment where you combine effort and ability with a manageable task or risk, you create the perceived opportunity for success. It's the key to student motivation. If I think I can, I will do more. And so that has to be done through an atmosphere. So is movement the only way you can do that? Of course not. But there are many ways to do it through movement. So I'm going to ask about 8 or 10 of you to come up on stage. It'll be the most fun you've had all day, I promise. I won't embarrass you. But I'm going to ask you to come right up here. I want to do a little activity with you to show you about using movement with creating class cohesion or team building. So come on up. Pre-flu season, so we're good. I'm going to ask you to get into a circle right here on stage and try to stay away from the edge All right. Now I'm going to ask you to take hands. And I'm going to throw a balloon in the center of the circle, and I'm going to ask you guys to keep it in the air without letting go of hands. Okay? You can use your feet, knees, hips, nose, chin, head, clasped hands. That's fine. Just keep it in the air off the ground, and don't let go of your hands.
Got it.
All right, here comes balloon number 2.
Oh, coming over. Yeah, thanks, one, all right? Got it. I got it. You got it.
And here comes balloon number 3.
Yeah, we got this guy.
For about 20 seconds.
Dark blue. Oh, you got it. Oh.
10 seconds. All right, guys, thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. So a simple activity like that, what benefits do you see? What do you think? Yes? Teamwork, obviously, correct. First and foremost, teamwork, and that's what we're trying to build in the classroom. No matter what goes on outside this door in the rest of the school and the rest of your day, in my room here, it is safe. It is safe to achieve, it is safe to make mistakes, because the brain rarely gets it right the first time. The kids need to know that failure is fantastic. It gives you free information on what not to do again. But we need to set up the environment for that. So teamwork is one. What else? Yes? Trust, yeah. To be successful in a classroom community, there needs to be trust between students and between teachers and students. What else? Communication, absolutely. Right? High on the list of what we're trying to develop in students throughout their educational life. Anything else? Fun. Basic human need. Right? It's on Glasser's list of basic human needs. Now he doesn't say, hey, let's go have fun. He says fun's the natural payoff for learning. But yeah, fun is important. Laughter is important. It's actually physically good for us. There's something called the endothelium in our veins. And it's actually from research from the University of Maryland, laughter strengthens that. Anything else? Confidence. Movement. Yeah. We don't need to take that brain break, because we're going to build some teamwork today for just about 90 to 120 seconds, and we're going to move. So it's good. Okay? Okay, step 5 in the framework is reviewing content using movement. So you're starting to see how teachers have to make decisions. We are brain-body learners. Learning doesn't happen from the neck up. Learning happens from the feet up. And as teachers, we need to make good, sound decisions for our kids about when it's appropriate, because it's not always appropriate. You're getting a hard dose of it tonight, but it's not always appropriate. So those are the decisions that need to be made. So step 5 is reviewing content. And I'd like to show you quickly how we can do that using movement. Again, is it always appropriate? No. But it can be appropriate and it can be a powerful tool. So, with nothing in your hands, if you were to stand at your seat, you're not going to have to go anywhere. Just stand at your seat. I'm going to ask you a few multiple choice questions. Not very high on Bloom's taxonomy, but we're just doing some simple recall stuff right now. You're going to answer me physically. So if the answer is A, I'd like you to walk in place. Let's just do that together. Great. If the answer is B, I'd like you to touch your opposite knee. If the answer is C, I'd like you to do an upper body jumping jack. If the answer is D, I'd like you to do the nose-ear thing. Good. Let's review quickly. A, B, C, and D. Great. Here we go. Don't answer me until I go through all 4 options. Then I'll say go. Which of these individuals was not a U.S. president? Was it A, George Washington? That's not right. Okay? B, John Quincy Adams. C, Alexander Hamilton. D, Martin Van Buren. Go. And the answer is C, Alexander Hamilton. Okay, everybody knows that. No one knew that 5 years ago. Now everybody knows about Alexander Hamilton, right? Had the affair, didn't get to be president, got killed by the vice president. Yeah. All right, next, which actress portrayed Erin Brockovich? Is it A, Charlize Theron, B, Jennifer Aniston, C, Julia Roberts, or D, Angelina Jolie? Go. Again, C. Good. In what is considered the worst trade in the history of sports? Babe Ruth was traded to the New York Yankees from what team? Is it A, the Chicago White Sox, B, the Philadelphia A's, C, the Brooklyn Dodgers, or D, the Boston Red Sox? Go. And the answer is D, Boston Red Sox. Okay? Curse of the Bambino. Last easy question. What is the capital? What city is the capital of California? Is it A, Sacramento, B, Los Angeles, C, San Francisco, or D, San Diego? Go. Correct. Very good. Now, while you're still standing there, what are some benefits of this activity? As far as review is concerned, what are the obvious benefits? What do you got? Yes? That's right. Instantly. Instead of looking through papers, going through the computer logs and checking who knew what, I know instantly that if we come back here tomorrow, I need to go over who Babe Ruth was traded from. Okay? Told me instantly. Everything else I'm good. Okay, good. What else? What's another benefit? Do I need to take a brain break? No. I'm doing something academic while standing and moving. Okay? What else?
It can be used in a small area or a tight environment.
It can be used in a small area or a tight environment, which is true life for a lot of teachers. Yeah. What else? How about? It's fun. Again, it's fun. It's engaging. And is everybody engaged in the review? How often have you been in a situation or have facilitated a situation where we say, who is the second president of the United States, boys and girls, and the same four kids raise their hands. Sally gets picked on, and the rest of the kids say, whew, glad she didn't pick on me. And you stop the retrieval process, which is slower for some kids. Even if they learn the information quickly, it's slower for some kids. Okay, so it's another reason. And is it safe? Yes, I saw plenty of people doing this. Oh, yeah. Right? It's safe. You can change your answer. And of course, it's not the only way you'll review or assess, but it is effective, can be effective if done correctly. And you might even see a kid once in a while say on a test, they're doing the test, and okay, yeah, I got it. They equate the physical activity with the answer. Thanks. Have a seat. Finally, teaching content using movement. Teaching content using movement. Now, I'm going to ask, I apologize. In fact, we'll do it right down here. I can even facilitate it. Well, no, we better come up on stage. Can I have, again, 6 to 8 volunteers to come on up on stage? All you're going to do is stand in a circle. You don't have to take hands, and you don't have to keep a balloon in the air, I promise. Same people want to come on down, that's great. Circle it up. I didn't notice that shirt the first time. I have one of those. Yeah, wait to see his shirts. Exercise grows brain cells. People look at you funny in the store when you're, what does that mean? All right, now I need one more individual to come up because I have a special job for you. Again, I'm not going to embarrass you, I promise. But one more person who's going to do some walking. Come on. For this, I definitely need the circle to move this way a little bit with space still though between you and the screen. So make a really, yeah, there we go. Make a really great circle, no eggs or ovals, and you can make it a little tighter. Great. Okay. I would like you to start right here. I want you to count your steps, heel toe, all around the circle. So just like 1, 2, 3, okay? You have size 15 feet, right? It won't take very long. Okay, go ahead. You know, you don't have to do it out loud. What do you got?
Right there.
Okay, right there, stay there. Good. Now, I want you to turn towards me. Now, would you please open up the circle here and open up the circle here. Now, walk a straight line to me, count your steps. Same thing, heel toe. Eight or 8.5 even, okay? So what did we just do kinesthetically? We figured out the circumference and diameter of a circle. We took it out of the overhead, we took it out of the book, off the worksheet, out of our mouths, and we made it real. There's so many advantages here. The bottom line is that a kid could go home that night and teach this in his kitchen because we did it kinesthetically. In fact, that would be the #1 way for him to remember that information. So we had episodic memory going on here. One of the reasons to use movement physical activity in the classroom, you remember where you are in space for this activity. The brain is always creating a learning address for where you are when you're learning something. Meaning, if I was going to test you tomorrow on this, where would I have you sit? Same place, right where you are, yeah. And now I can remember where you were, and I can remember the equation because of that episodic memory. Episodic memory, to make it real for you, where were you when you first heard about 9/11? The fact that you remember that memory and will never forget it is the emotional memory lane. But the fact that you can remember where you were is this, it's episodic memory. There's one more thing in play here, and that's implicit learning. And you know what, thank you very much. You can go have a seat. That's great. How many people in here can remember, not even in order, the first 10 presidents of the United States? Raise your hand. I usually have 1, maybe 2, and many times none. Okay, I can't either. How many people in here can change a light bulb? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So it could be that this was easy for the brain. 10 presidents of the United States, first 10, right? But it's not. Not how the brain prefers to learn. I am not at all suggesting that we don't memorize, that we don't use rote memorization, that we don't study, that we don't take notes. That's life, and it's important. Good with that. But here, we watch somebody do it once. We did it ourselves once or twice, and we had it for life. That fascinates me. That's the brain's preferred way to learn, which is implicitly, almost below our conscious awareness, happening through movement and emotion. The other reason we can't remember the list, who cares, right? Meaning is critical to memory formation. I can Google it. I don't need to know that, okay? But so we want to create more implicit opportunities in school for children to learn. And that's what we're doing here. Now, implicit and explicit work together like two wheels on a bike. We can't pull them apart. But a lot of school learning happens here. And we want just some more opportunities for school learning to happen here, like the light bulb. We just take this for granted because it seems so simple. But really, when you stop and think about it, it could be reverse, but it's not. So that is the framework. When I was working with teachers in this school district today, that's the framework I was sharing with them. Was preparing the brain, providing brain breaks, supporting exercise and fitness, creating class cohesion, reviewing content, and teaching content. Because again, learning doesn't happen from the neck up, it happens from the feet up. And folks, this is K-12. It's going to look differently in a 12th grade classroom than it is in a kindergarten classroom. And you may not use the same activities, of course, that you would here. But it's just as important for them. My second book, called Training in Motion, is written for corporate trainers. It's for adults. Everybody needs to move when they're learning. The other thing I want to make clear before I go on to a few brain principles that support using this is the evolving classroom. That's important to understand. In 2 decades or so, I'm just making a prediction, you're going to see this. It's already happening across the United States and all over the world. You're seeing what's called flexible seating. You're seeing desks and chairs, traditional desks and chairs, being thrown out in favor of pedal desks, in favor of strider desks, in favor of standing desks, in favor of exercise balls and wobble chairs. The classroom is changing to meet the true needs of the learner. So that's something to look for and expect. And I know it's already happening here. And decisions are being made about how to implement and how to spend and what's the best use of our dollars to maximize student achievement. That's always the bottom line. This is not about fun. It's just about the bottom line of academic achievement. Every part of the framework and in this, what I call the evolving classroom. So that is something to really begin to look at. And I know this district is looking at how to implement it in the best way. And that's fantastic because, folks, there are already classrooms across the United States that are fully loaded. The desks and chairs are gone. I was in one this summer in Charleston, South Carolina, and it's fantastic. And she's got all the data, this is a 5th grade teacher, all the data to support what she's doing. And her principal says that her classroom has a hum about it because it does. Everybody has a place to be in there. They either have a pedal desk, or they have a standing desk, or they have a bar on the bottom that can just go like this, or they have a strider desk, a glider desk, an elliptical desk. Everyone in that classroom has a piece of equipment. So not everyone in the school uses that. Some have smaller stations, some have none at all. But this person, Stacy Shoecraft, has opted for the entire classroom that looks that way. So that's just something else to be aware of what's happening, what's coming, where our classrooms, when you think about it, haven't evolved for several hundred years in that manner. Technology has come into the room, but there's still desks and chairs. And now we're really starting to realize a different kind of need and a different kind of classroom. So what supports all this movement? What about the cognitive research? Well, there's a few things I'd like to share with you. And number one is that the brain prefers novelty. The brain prefers novelty. I want to tell you first that the brain prioritizes information in 3 ways. The first being survival. The brain will survive first. It's really, that perceives that its only job. You want to be happy? That's your job. The brain is here for you to survive, okay? If you're in the middle of a road and a truck comes barreling down on you, are you going to stop and say, hey, what great crime? No, you're out of the way. It's your brain's survival mechanism. And most kids are not coming to school in that manner. They could be. There may be some things going on, whether it's some kind of abuse, neglect, some kind of tragic experience. They can be coming in survival mode. But most of the time, they're not there. The second level, where the brain prioritizes information, every day teachers see kids at this level. It's the emotional level. It runs your life. It runs my life, it runs students' lives. So teachers have to be prepared, and we talked about that some today, for those kids coming into the classroom. What are you doing for them when they walk in the door? And finally, where we want them to be, we get past survival, we get past emotion, we want them to be at the cognitive level. That's the 3rd place and final place the brain will go, but that's what we wanted to start out with. So going back to the list, having said that, brain wants to be safe, but it loves novelty. And 2 really great ways to, well, one of the best novelty uses in the classroom is movement. So if I'm just having a conversation with you about movement and about novelty, and all of a sudden, sorry, I know someday that's not going to end well. I do that, you notice that, correct? Your brain is pre-programmed to notice differences. Pre-programmed to notice differences. When I'm talking with teachers, I tell them that you have your kids in minutes for about how old they are. So if you're working with 11-year-olds, you got them for about 11 minutes. They're complete focus, okay? Once you go beyond that threshold, the way it gets tough. Unless you have them emotionally engaged, and this is the greatest, most fantastic lesson they've ever been involved with. Is that happening every day, every minute in our schools? No, it's not reality. So teachers have to be aware of that. Remember, the brain is always paying attention, I tell them, just not to you. It's a survival mechanism, and after so long, the brain starts to scan its environment for threats. It's just natural to the brain. That's why it loves novelty. Okay, number 2, the brain loves movement. That's why we're here tonight. But it's brain principle number 2. So let me demonstrate. So if you were watching me, did you have to say, hey brain, he's on the move, watch him? No. Did it do it automatically? Yes. That's because your brain is pre-programmed to learn through the movement of objects and people in its environment, and pre-programmed to learn through its own movement. This is probably the most powerful learning tool, this whole thing, that we have. So the brain prefers movement. Excuse me. Number 3, I need a volunteer for number 3. Just to come on up, I'm going to have you come up on stage for a moment. You're not going to have to move a thing. You're going to have to answer a few questions, and I promise I won't embarrass you. But I need you as an example. Anybody want to come on up? Come on up. Yeah. There, come on. So Dave, would you please tell us where you went to school, went to college? Go ahead.
I went to Central Connecticut State University for undergrad, Western Illinois for grad school, and Sacred Heart University for 6 years.
All right, great. Would you tell us your job here in the district, who and what you teach and what you oversee?
Sure. K through 12 coordinator for health and physical education, so I work in all 8 of the schools in the district.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
Sure. I have a wife, Amy, a daughter, Ellie, who is in 6th grade, still seems crazy, and Brooke, who is 9 in 4th grade, and our little guy, Nicholas, just turned 6 a couple weeks ago. He's in kindergarten.
Okay, great. And finally, would you tell us a few hobbies?
No time. No like exercise, kind of everything that you're hearing tonight, takes the mind off things, and anything with kids, skiing, anything outdoors, hiking.
Okay, great. That's all we need to know. Let's see the next one. When David was talking, did you have to stop and say, hey brain, he's talking, make some connections? No. Did your brain make connections? Yeah. Did you pull in thoughts into your working memory that made a direct connection? I can tell you mine. When he talked about when he finally got to Sacred Heart, son of my friends a couple years ago was being recruited by Sacred Heart to play football. That's what came in. When he was talking about his family, I was thinking about my kids when they were 12. They're 20 now, but when they were 12, what it was like. And when in 6th grade, 11 in 6th grade. Wow, I wish it was still that simple. And you wish it wouldn't go so fast. I agree. When you were talking about coordinator, I was thinking of a friend of mine in Mississippi who also has the same position. I worked in Mississippi a lot. It's just what my brain brought in. So here's the beautiful thing. You have a part of your brain called the hippocampus that anytime any new incoming data comes into the brain, it searches long-term memory storage for relevancy. Happens in school all the time. Anytime a teacher gives new information, hippocampus searches long-term memory storage for relevancy. If it can't find it, teacher better be working really hard to create it. Because there are two key criteria for storing things in the long term. And that's a teacher's job, to store things in the long term. For students, teaching them how. Bottom line, either use it on a test or use it in their life next week, next year, 10 years from now. And the two criteria are, does it make sense? Does it have meaning? And I will tell you that meaning is more powerful. And so this meaning piece is critical, and you can create meaningful activities through movement. So we have novelty, have movement, we have a meeting. Time for a brain break. Will you stand up, please? Okay. I would like you to use the top of your head as a writing utensil in the air to write the name of your mother, just like this. Easy enough. I'd like you to take your right elbow and write the name of your father. That's good. Take your left elbow and write the name of your best friend. It's really funny, but some people wait. They're thinking about it. Folks, nobody's going to know. You can write whatever you want. You can write Brad Pitt. Okay, so now this is where it gets fun. You've all won an all-expenses-paid trip for 2 weeks anywhere in the world you want to go. With your right hip, I'd like you to write where you're going. Mine has 2 dots. Now with your left hip, I would like you to write the name of the meal that you would have on this trip every day. It's a great place, it's free, and there's no calories. Go. Okay. And you can have a seat. Just need to get some blood flow. Principle number 4, there's 6 of them. The brain needs social and environmental interaction. Easy. Have we done that tonight already, just in here? We've worked together. If I had more time and more space, we'd work in groups. Movement does that easily. So it's another brain principle, a factor in learning, that we'll all need some degree of social interaction that movement solves. I'm going to ask you a question now. You're not going to have to, of course, reveal the answer. We're just going to do it here. I'd like you to think about your most powerful memories. Go. And stop. I know we're already there. Raise your hand if there was an emotion attached to it. Yeah. Anyone think about their 8th grade social studies class? Just checking. Sometimes I do. I was raised in a time where you could walk in to, I walked into my social studies classroom and all the notes were written on all 6 of the boards. Have you ever experienced that? And you would just sit and copy the notes. Maybe you got a little bit of an explanation and that was your class. That was an emotional time for me. So emotions, number 5, emotions help embed memories. Powerful, powerful. So anytime new data enters the brain, there's a part of the brain in the center called the amygdala that checks data, incoming data, for emotional content. If it detects it strongly enough, it will lock it in. It boosts chemicals in parts of the brain that store memories long term, and boom, got it for life. Have you ever been going down the road 5 years later and you hear the breakup song, right? I mean, it takes you right back and you experience the same sensations physically and emotionally. That's your amygdala at work. Okay, powerful stuff. We've already created a lot of positive emotions in here using movement, correct? But we can do that. Finally, the brain, number 6, the brain requires, needs, wants, loves, concrete experience. It wants to do. So anytime a teacher can take an abstract concept and make it concrete and real, the brain says yes, right? At some point, no matter what your profession, you're a teacher, you're a lawyer, doctor, dentist, plumber, at some point you have to do. And I ask teachers, were you a good teacher after your first 2 years of undergrad? And I'll shake their heads no. Were you a good teacher after your student taught a little bit better? You know, were you a good teacher after your first year, 3rd year, 10th year? Yeah, I'm comfortable and I'm feeling good. That's from doing. And the more we can do that in the classroom, the more we meet that need in the brain. So those are 6 brain principles that support using movement and physical activity in all learning contexts in all classrooms. All classrooms. All right. I want to explain a couple more things before we get to some questions and answers. And I just had a choice of chairs tonight to bring up here on stage, and I just love this pink chair. So, oh, So when we've been seated for too long, again, I'll mention that blood pools in the butt and legs. Just by standing up, we get a really good percentage of blood flow around the brain and body, back to the brain where we want it. If that's the extent of what a teacher does, keep working, don't talk, just stand up. Just keep going. At least we're getting blood flow and oxygen flow around the brain and body. It's good. The other thing that happens when you sit for too long is that your brain says, hey, you've been sitting for a while, you must be sleepy. And it does a little chemical brain dance, and it releases chemicals that make you sleepier. And that works against what we're trying to do in the classroom. Now, the final thing is, I know all the students in the Westport schools sit, and the Bethel schools, a few people from Bethel here tonight, sit like this the entire time they're in class. Just can't wait for the next word you have to say, right? Well, a lot of times it's like, oh, she is talking again, right? And they cramp their breathing systems. So, we need kids to be up and moving. And so a couple more benefits of creating a kinesthetic classroom and getting kids to move and be physically active in the classroom include not only implicit learning, not only episodic memory, but providing breaks. In this country, we have become so accustomed to, and content is the most important thing, but it's how we deliver it. We've become so accustomed to thinking that more time, when the research shows when you cut back on some content time in favor of physical activity and physical exercise, academic achievement rises. So it's okay to take breaks. It pays benefits. There are countries around the world that teach for 45 minutes and they break for 15. And the research shows it's the best practice or they wouldn't do it. I'm not suggesting that happen here. I'm just saying that we need to take a look at some of that research. As far as the brain is concerned, shorter is usually better. And I encourage teachers to teach in short bursts. The hippocampus just cannot take in that much information at one time. As an adult, you have about a working memory that can hold about 5 to 9 bits of unrelated information at one time. And that's even stretching it. And researchers are showing that working memory is shrinking. What that means is if I put 14 numbers up on the board, or up on the PowerPoint board, you can tell how old I am, and asked gave you minutes to memorize it, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. Eventually you could chunk it out, but not in the time that I've given to you. It's exceeded your working memory capacity. And we often exceed kids' working memory capacities. It's like taking a pitcher of water and putting it into a Dixie cup. It overflows quickly. So breaks are good, and movement can provide a break that's needed, okay? I encourage teachers to teach in short bits, give kids an opportunity to process, whether it's discussion, reading, creating a poster, whatever it is, let them process the information, give them a break. Then come back to more information, maybe a little bit of review and extension, okay? So this becomes a very nuanced idea of using movement, and it goes back to being a facilitator and a designer. Some of the other reasons that support using movement: sensory engagement. The brain stores information through sensory cues, and this is one more way of creating a sensory opportunity for the brain to store the information when we're teaching circumference and diameter this way, instead of just maybe listening and jotting that way. It differentiates instruction. Differentiation's been around for a long time. It's been labeled over the last decade or so. And you can differentiate in 3 ways. You can differentiate through readiness. Kids come to classrooms at different levels of readiness. Teachers need to be aware, and they are, and they differentiate that way. You can differentiate through interest. Okay? Interest is about meaning, is about emotion. It's a very powerful way to differentiate. And finally, you can differentiate through learning profile. And the vast majority of kids in classrooms today, in the mid-1990s, it showed about 81% of all classrooms, grades 3 to 12, are either visual or kinesthetic preferred learners. So we're differentiating the learning profile when using movement and physical activity in the classroom. Finally, the two most important reasons for using movement and physical activity in the classroom. First is state management. Now, I often ask teachers, have you ever even heard of state management? And globally, there's a few hands that go up and they don't know. It's okay. And it's still one of the most important things they need to understand. Managing state is about managing a student's brain, body, emotional being, or state. We're not used to thinking that way. You come in this classroom, you sit down, you're quiet, you do your work, you go. But you know what can't be helped? Is this. Kid is still quiet. Not doing anything to anybody, not talking, not disrupting. They're just disinterested, bored. Maybe you can go down the list. Now, why is that a bad thing? Why is that state not good for learning? Well, here we go. This might be the most important sentence I said all day or say tonight. Meaning making is state dependent. So if the two criteria for storing information long term are does it make sense and does it have meaning, and the more important one is meaning, I would pay attention to that sentence. Meaning making is state dependent. Meaning how I feel about the information makes a difference. The state I'm in, the emotional brain body state I'm in, makes a difference about how I'm going to react to the information. So if a teacher is just about to get to a point where, wow, this is like one of the most important things of the day, and they see the class like, ooh, winds out of the sail, that's when you stop, you're reading the class, you manage state, quick brain break, turn to your partner, boom. Or don't even turn to your partner. Just needs up for 30 seconds, okay? Tap our heels behind, front. Great, now we sit down, refreshed. I've got a focused and energized learner. Now we're gonna hit them with the 3 reasons the Civil War started. That's being a great state manager. And movement is your primary manager of state. And it's critical. I was telling a teacher today I got to spend a week with Tony Robbins a couple of years ago in his Business Masters seminar in Las Vegas. You talk about a king state manager. Wow. I mean, you show up at 7, you get to work at 8, you're there until 10 p.m. with maybe an hour break. And you just go, you don't want to leave. You could stay till 1 in the morning. It's crazy. If you're up on your chair, and you're dancing and you're screaming and they have dancers on stage, he's just killing it, preparing you for state management, okay. And then he gives his talk, or he has someone come in and give a talk, and that's how the learning takes place. So state management is really critical to learning, and he understands that better than anybody else. Finally, I've also designed a graduate course on motivation for students and staff. And I based part of the graduate course on the work with William Glasser and choice theory, control theory. And he says we have 5 basic human needs, which is going to be important to this conversation. And they are survival, belonging, freedom, power, or competence. He uses those words interchangeably, and fun. He says we have a scrapbook in our head of how our life should be, and we're constantly comparing it to the outside world and acting on that comparison to meet our needs. He says there is no misbehavior, that all behavior is purposeful to meet our needs. That behavior mod doesn't work. That if we did more to meet the needs of students in the classroom, we would do more to promote the behavior we want and the academic achievement we want. Now, movement's not the only way to meet basic human needs, but it's a good way. Think about it. My son's first grade experience, which I think I mentioned to you already, maybe it was earlier in the day, but he sat his entire first grade experience. He's a college athlete, and so you know he's a kinesthetic learner. But he's a rule follower, so he sat his entire year, first grade. And so just him being able to get up meets a survival need. Have we done things together tonight? Sure. We partnered. We create belonging through movement. Have we differentiated and learned through movement? Circumference and diameter. And there's about 1,000 more that I could have done tonight. So we're differentiating instruction. We're creating powerful students based on how they prefer to learn. Always appropriate? No. When appropriate? Yes. Freedom. Schools are restricted places by nature. I get that. And just by allowing kids the movement and physical activity in the classroom, newfound sense of freedom, especially in those middle school years, when they're searching for that freedom. And finally, fun. Now, Glasser says fun, as I told you before, is a natural payoff for learning. But we can create fun easily using movement. So let me ask you a question. Have you been more motivated tonight when you've been moving or when you've been listening to me? Raise your hand. You won't hurt my feelings if you've been more motivated, engaged in the moment when you've been moving. Really? Oh yeah, no, that's good, right? Have you been more motivated when you've been listening? It's a no-brainer, right? The best byproduct of creating a kinesthetic classroom is student motivation, without question. Not the only way to do it, but it is a great way to do it. And I encourage all teachers that I work with to look at it from that perspective to motivate them. Finally, I want to say to you parents that I am so happy that Westport has had me here, that they are beginning their journey. And I want to make that impression and make that point, that they are beginning their journey. They're very early in their professional development. They're very early, not all, some are very advanced, but very early in making this kind of district-wide initiative, in making decisions and moving forward. So I think you're going to begin to see more and more of it in the classroom, but I would be patient. I got to work with some teachers today, but not even close to all because of the way the day had to be set up. And there's going to be more experience for the teachers over the coming months and years to really put this into place. But they're being very measured and very careful about how they do it and how they get buy-in. And I think it's really fantastic that they're doing it. But this just doesn't happen overnight. You've had people doing, what they feel, and many are doing best practice for years. And change doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually. Some people are going to dive right in, others are going to take a little bit of time. So I think you should just be maybe patient with the process and let it evolve. Knowing what's out there, knowing what's coming, knowing the district is on board and they're moving towards that end. So at this point, what I'd like to do with the time we have left is to open it up to questions from you or any comments. And I'm here and happy to answer any questions. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure.
It's been very informational and interesting.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if you can give me maybe not a precise formula, but an approximate formula of what would be the best time to take a break, or what would be the longitude of the actual sitting time versus breaks, and something to that effect.
It depends on, can you give me the level and the amount of time?
So let's say I'm a parent, not a teacher. So
Okay.
let's say my daughter is studying for 4 hours or 3 hours, let's say.
Okay.
At what point would she be taking her first break?
If you have a 3-hour time period, I would generally, what comes to mind is about every half hour, just to at least stand, just for a moment, get a drink of water, come on back to your work. Okay? Or they can be very physically active for 3 to 5 minutes, knowing that this aerobic activity is really going to help me over the next half hour, 45 minutes. So I would say, generally speaking, half hour to 45 minutes. It's independently child dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So But that's what I would offer to you.
Great, and so the breaks you're saying should be about 3 to 5 minutes or so?
I think that's a good time frame. Yeah, there's so many different ways to take a break. Going for a walk is fantastic. Jumping rope is fantastic. Just standing up, stretching, getting a drink of water is fantastic. Something to get away from the content and to then, get back in there and get to work. Okay.
Great, and my second question is, within the classroom setting, have all the teachers been exposed to this concept of kinesthetic classroom, and are the students now sort of, not, I wouldn't say allowed, but are they expected to make, to practice some of your teachings, or would that be inaccurate at this time with the
You know
teachers?
what? I maybe would be able to answer that from my perception. David, can I?
Perfect. I'll answer that. Not yet, but we are working in that direction.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would say that, based on me being here and what I've seen, how many teachers I was able to work with, I would say not yet. But it will be happening more and more. That's what I think will happen. But yeah.
So for now, the students should really kind of follow the classroom rules and not make any waves.
Please.
Oh, yeah. And always, and this doesn't have to do, there's always going to be classroom rules, even with the movement piece, and they should follow them always.
Yeah, no, I was just curious where the
Yeah,
teachers stood on this.
you know what,
Yeah.
it's really, if I'm giving it a word, it's going, but it's in its infancy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have too high of an expectation right now.
Hi, I was wondering if you could say the best exercises that you'd recommend, maybe you could work on with your child at home to help strengthen both sides of their brain, especially say if they're having trouble with writing and their handwriting's terrible, whatever, but just all over in general, what would be best to balance the brain? Do you know 2 or 3 good exercises that you recommend, and maybe a book or something
Yeah.
for their study?
Yeah, you know what I would do, or a couple of things, 2 things. And I'm very comfortable, it's up here on the screen, so I'm comfortable telling you about it. I would definitely recommend the Kinesthetic Classroom Teaching and Learning Through Movement. You go to Amazon, I don't carry books, I don't sell them in the back after we're done. And I'm comfortable telling you because for a $31 retail, you can get it for cheaper on Amazon. I make about $1. That's not how I make my money, it's a means to an end. I love writing, but that's not it. So having said that, there's about 170 activities in there. And I would stick to the prepare the brain activities. I would read about what we've written about vestibular system development and about the brain, and then look at the prepare the brain exercises specifically, which I think is chapter 4. I would also check out braingym.org. braingym.org. It is a system in itself, and it has some balancing activities in there, and there's research on the website, so those are my 2 recommendations. And I just think healthy doses of aerobic activity do more than just about anything else I know.
Barnes & Noble in town can also get the books.
Okay.
We've got several copies there.
Hi, I have 2 middle schoolers, almost, going into high school. And I'm wondering, this might be a question for you. Has there been any programs that you've done specifically to talk to the student themselves, so they specifically know, hey, I think I need a break. Hey, I need to get up, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to move around a little bit. Are they educated in their own feelings on this?
I'll take that from a district standpoint. I would say that teachers have been educated and developed professionally to really be aware of their student needs. So while this isn't a full-out program that every educator in the district is applying, emotional intelligence is a big piece that we have been working on throughout the district, and just being aware of the needs of the kids and when they need it. So it may be those opportunities to have a quick break, or it may be giving kids a little bit more leniency if they need to kind of refocus themselves.
My specific question was wondering, educating the children on their not the teachers knowing of them, but educating the children on their own emotions and what they can do to help themselves.
Okay, yes, so sorry, expanding on that, yes, that message is being delivered to the students as well. So they should feel comfortable in that sense that if they need that break, that they're being encouraged to do so, again, within the confines of classroom rules and keeping things in orderly manner. But yes, that is something that we're working on delivering to the students as well.
So I really found it interesting, the circle exercise with the circumference, and I think that would be great. I'm sure you pass that out on teachers, but for them, are they given other places to go to more of their teachings into more kinesthetic learning? I'm wondering if that's happening too, because I'm, as a former teacher, that's not something you learn when you're in school getting your degree, right? So it would be something they would have to kind of be given those tools to put their lessons into a kinesthetic format.
Yeah, there are resources, and in fact, our program is almost completely online now. When you heard in the beginning, I work for the Regional Training Center, we offer graduate courses. Well, it just so happens that the final graduate course that's going to be a part of the master's program as a concentration choice, and the last one we're putting online, because it's the most difficult one to put online, but we have a lot of video to do it, is the Kinesthetic Classroom. So that's something as a resource that would be available online. As long as there's reciprocity, we're still dealing with state-to-state reciprocity with people in Connecticut taking a course from an institution in Pennsylvania. I can't say off the top of my head if there is reciprocity there, but that's one way to do it. There's a lot of resources online. There's a lot of videos online. The book is a great resource. One of the later chapters, I think chapter 9, deals with content with elementary and secondary in language arts, in math, in science, and social studies. A lot of activities there. The next book is going to also include the arts. So it's out there, and there are ways to get educated to do it. That's a good question.
I've got your next question here. You talked about the 6-part framework for using movement and physical activity, and your first 2 parts were preparing the brain to learn and then providing brain blasts or brain breaks. Mm-hmm. Is there a big difference in those activities? Is there a big difference in the separation of activities you would choose to prepare the brain and activities you would choose for brain blasts, or are those interchangeable?
They're interchangeable one way. You can use the prepare the brain activities as, I'm going to say this, and you make sure Justin knows I said this, you can use prepare the brain activities as brain blasts or brain boosts. But you cannot necessarily take the brain boosts and make them prepare the brain activities. Because the prepare the brain activities specifically either cross the midline or they're working with vestibular system development. So they're different that way. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the brain blast, the crossing the midline, and balance.
Yeah.
Those primarily are there. So those could be used for step number 2. But
they could be used. Yeah, you just want to give the kids I'm going to say it how I like to say it. You want to give kids a brain break? Well, then you can also get up and do a couple of cross the midline activities, and that counts.
Okay.
But I can't go back to prepare the brain, and this is not a cross the midline activity.
Right.
So it works one way, but not the other.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'm a guidance counselor. I'm not in this district. My daughter works in the district. Invited me to come to this. I thought it would be a great idea. I'm up in Waterbury, and we have a lot of kids with a lot of behavioral issues up there. And today I taught a 4th grade class. I do a developmental guidance lesson, and they were very squirmy and weren't listening. And I took a little ball that I bring with me to the classroom, and I threw it to them to get anyone who wanted to answer the question, so that they didn't call out. But also I found that they were more engaged when I did it. I was using it more of a controlling, I didn't want them talking unless they were holding the ball. And they all wanted to have it thrown to them, so it settled them down, and then they were all participating. but I see how connected this is. We also do lessons on learning styles, and I think I could incorporate this with the kids, teaching them some of the things that you did today. I think that that would be very useful. I'm in a K through 5 and a K through 8 school, and I just think that this would be very valuable for everybody in my schools.
Well, I'm glad. That makes me feel good, and I'm glad it can be helpful. I think one of the keys to making a successful classroom using movement and physical activity is educating the kids about why this is important for them, so that there's buy-in. And I think it would be very helpful. Anytime you can use movement, you're going to get the kids settled back down. One of the fears of teachers is, oh my gosh, how am I going to get my kids back? But they find that as they do this, it's easy. It just is natural. You teach them how you want it done, and practice, and it just becomes second nature in the classroom. So, good, thank you.
Could you provide specific strategies to break that idea that if I get my students up and moving, then I'm not going to be able to refocus them or get them back into the lesson and engage?
Yeah, people have different ways of doing it. You might have some kind of sound maker, like a rain stick. It may be a signal. I get up on chairs a lot, and my students used to know that when I'm up on my chair, we're done, okay? And they would get back to how they were supposed to do it. You just have to teach them the signal and what it is. And again, it begins, I think, with education. This is how we're going to stand up, and we stand up, and nothing more than that. This is how we're going to sit down, and do it repeatedly, quietly, or however you want it to be done. If they can have 15 seconds of noise after they sit, great, but then we're done. So I think when there's an expectation, and then when there's also a signal, I think that combination works well together.
How long, I don't know if you know of any research studies, does it typically take for, say, if someone's brain isn't balanced, so to speak, to like see some improvement, like even a little bit of improvement? Like, how long does that typically take? Is it like 5 minutes? Is it 5 weeks? Is it 5 months? Like,
that's a short-term and a long-term question. So I can see improvement in the classroom almost immediately if they've been sitting for a while and they're squirmy and squirrely and not ready to learn, standing them up, giving them a brain activity to do, sit them back down, I see immediate improvement.
instantaneous. And then my second question is, with the kinesthetic activities like the circle and the circumference, once again, are there any books that you would recommend, like, that we could learn more about, like, to find examples of those activities, like how you had the girl walk around counter feet and do that in a classroom?
Yeah, again, it may sound like a broken record. I just think that our book is the best resource out there, with more than 170 activities, and look for the second one in May. So there's going to be literally hundreds more in our next book, which will be out in May. I think that's the best resource available. There is another great resource, a book called Learning on Your Feet. I think that's correct, by Jean Blades. And at that point, I don't know what's on the cover, Jean Blades Moyes or Jean Blades, it's Blaydes. And you can go to her website at actionbasedlearning.com. It's not called Learning on Your Feet, it's called Thinking on Your Feet. It's another great resource, hundreds of activities. I don't think you'll find that book in the online booksellers. You have to go to her website at actionbasedlearning.com. It really is another great website, a great resource or book for what you're asking for. Anyone else?
Hi. I really enjoyed this. This has been really terrific.
Thanks.
Question. If you have a student who has ADHD, for example, in comparison to the rest of the students, will doing something like this help them more so? Do you think you were saying that about, if you could just repeat a little bit about that BDF or...
Sure.
That was it.
If you purchase Spark, read Spark, you will learn all about BDNF. And BDNF is a chemical, to keep it pretty simple, that is essential to learning. And when you exercise, it gets released from the large muscle groups. And it just is it's a brain chemical, it's essential for learning. And so kids with ADHD make less of it. That's why they have the need to move so much. So yes, as those kids are able to move, it helps them. And oftentimes what's best practice for a child with ADHD or other types of learning differences is also best practice for all the kids in the room. I think every child in the room will benefit from an activity I'm going to do, and will especially benefit the kid with ADHD who's saying, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, they'll definitely benefit. And I have to tell you, there's research out there that shows that, you know, kids who exercise, aerobically exercise, get in their target heart rate zone for 30 minutes before school, have their ADHD meds drastically reduced. So it's just making a positive impact on the brain, and when you buy Spark and read about ADHD, you'll come to a better understanding about that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a better understanding of this framework for using movement in the classroom, about the classroom that's developing and coming down the road, and a better understanding about the brain principles and the reasons why movement is so critical to our classrooms, and about also where the district is and where they're going. It has been a pleasure and honor to be in Westport today, and you've been wonderful to come out tonight, and I thank you very much and wish you well and wish your students and children well. Thank you.